Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. It is Science and Tech Tuesday. I am on time again. Dazer, suck it. And yeah, we're gonna get rolling here. So, uh, tossed a couple ideas around, and I think that certainly we are going to. Well, I know because that's what I prep for. We're gonna watch the launch of the NASA Tropics launch. Um, we'll talk more about it as we're going. We're gonna watch it as it normally went up. It is the NASA Tropics launch from Rocket Labs. Uh, this happened on Sunday night, but we had couldn't body count over on Rumble. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Part one, and that's one that I know everybody was waiting to see. So we're gonna watch this as it's happening live, as if it's happening live. This is cyclone tracking Tropics CubeSats from the Kiwi country, New Zealand. So we'll watch it and talk about the rocket, get into some stuff, and talk about the payload. Yeah, so should be a fun one. So let's say hi to everybody, and we'll get right into it. So we have the wonderful Impish. Hello, Dazer. What's up? Not SpaceX tonight. Rocket Labs. Tweety, good to see you. What's up, Kaiser? I was technically early. I was there before it switched. I was 13 seconds early. Well, I know. That's why I had to be like, I had to straddle that line. So the intro actually played through. So I wasn't actually still, but I was. Hey, Jude. Jason J. Okay, is this an actual NASA launch? This is a NASA launch, but a NASA launch provided by a company out of New Zealand called Rocket Labs. And we'll go into Rocket Labs a little bit because they're a newer one on the radar of the fans here. But this was a NASA payload that was contracted to Rocket Labs. So, hey, Barbara. And over on the Rumbles, which we're also streaming live on, we have the wonderful Impish yet again. So this is a pretty cool one. We'll actually we'll go back a little bit, and that will give me some time to talk about it. So this is they launched off the coast of New Zealand. I actually don't know exactly where it is, but I'm sure it will tell us. Rocket Labs is a smaller rocket provider. They Rocket Lab. Yeah, they have the Electron rocket. They've currently put up 1,700 satellites. They have a much smaller rocket than SpaceX. We'll get into some of that data. And they're a New Zealand-based company, so that's pretty cool. They originally were going to stick with the Electron rocket, which is their small payload rocket. And after they started launching more, they figured out that they could make more money off of it. So they decided to make a bigger one, which they call the Proton rocket. Proton rocket, I believe. Let me make sure. Neutron rocket. Excuse me. So they also have a launch site in Virginia. And they're neat up becoming company. They're not obviously they're no SpaceX, but they're another provider that's fun to watch. So let's get into Rocket Labs. So this is their About Us page. This is their Electron rocket. And then space company delivering reliable launch services, debatable. Spacecraft, satellite components, and on-orbit management. Sorry, I gotta take a drink. So they have various mission support centers, as it says, in Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, Maryland, Toronto, and New Zealand. So they're officially headquartered now in Long Beach, California, because of their contracts with NASA, but they're still a New Zealand-based company for all intents and purposes. One of the interesting things with this rocket, and we'll get into it more, is called the hot swaps. So these are big batteries, huge batteries. They actually hot swap and drop the batteries to lose the weight, because they have a much smaller rocket than many of the other providers. So it's interesting and not something that's done in other launch providers. So 36 launches, 161 satellites deployed with this one. They have 3 launch pad and 3 Photon satellites on orbit. Here's some of their customers: NASA, the Space Force, DARPA, Black Sky, Spaceflight, Canon, Capella Space, Tyvek, Spire Fleet, Unseen Labs, Astro Digital. So their first time was in 2017, their first Electron rocket. That was an expendable rocket from New Zealand, and they've slowly made it so that it's recoverable, or most of it. I'm surprised that Taiwan doesn't have one in Arlington. They may. West Taiwan might have one in Arlington, but Rocket Labs, yeah, they're a Kiwi company, and they have several facilities. But Wallops Flight Facility is the only privately held one by NASA, the only privately held launch site that belongs actually to NASA itself. And now they have a Kiwi company that is their provider. There's a lot of exclusivity to space. I know a lot of companies are trying to change that. The barrier entry is very high, unfortunately. As you can see, DARPA Space Test Program, United States Air Force Space Command, a bunch of them that we've already explained. NRO. So this is the National Reconnaissance Office. These are always highly classified and highly top secret because of their sensitive nature. And we have a foreign country that's launching our sensitive military equipment. They launch from all over the world, different payloads. They're a very accessible provider. Don't get it wrong. I'm not a fan of NASA. I've been involved with NASA in several ways, and I'm not impressed. I think they're stuck 50 years in the past, and yeah, I don't think they're the preeminent provider. I think many companies have passed them, and many are on the way. So here's the launch sites: 2 launch sites, 3 launch pads across 2 countries, unrivaled launch flexibility. Given that there's one in the southern hemisphere that is both accessible and can reach different orbits, because your orbital tracks, vehicles only have so much that they can only put it so far. So if you want it to orbit in a certain way, you have to launch it from a different facility. Well, the facilities are very, very limited. So it's nice to have another complex that's it's Māhia, New Zealand. And it's kind of a cool launch site because it's just out here in this open field off the side of one of these rocks, and it's relatively small. Here's the Electron rocket. This is their fuel infrastructure for cryo. They actually have a carbon fiber rocket, so it's carbon fiber. It is not steel or aluminum like many of the others. You can see frost rings and stuff like that. You can book a launch, but don't book one. Talk to me first. I'll tell you who to go with. I thought I brought up. Where the hell did I put it? Oh, Electron. There we go. All right, so we'll do this. Carbon fiber is pricey, and it's not worth the trade-off. It is for them because they have a very small rocket, but yeah, basically, and that's one that I want to tackle at some point. Operation Paperclip, that will be coming down the pike. It's one of the shows. I don't know what it is presently. Look it up. So they've had three successes and 3 failures with this vehicle. So about 92% success rate. Dedicated access to space for small satellites. Here we go. So, like I said, this rocket is much smaller than other ones that we've seen. It's only 18 meters high or 59 feet. Has a 1.2 meter diameter or 3.9 feet. It has 2 plus what they call a kick stage. Wet, it's about 2,800 pounds. It can take 661 pounds to low Earth orbit. Carbon composite, and it has LOX and RP1, so liquid oxygen and rocket grade kerosene. So a carbon fuel. So they have the kick stage, and basically what that is a controlled bomb that will kick it into its orbital track. So they can change trajectories and something like that. Looks like a damn skinny pencil. I was looking for more meat on the bone. A sexy rocket. Well, it's pretty damn sexy if you ask me. Not as sexy as a Falcon 9, but... So it has 9 sea-level Rutherford engines. So that's what they call their engines right here. Liftoff thrust is 190 kilonewtons, or 43,000 pounds. Peak thrust is 224 kilonewtons, or 56,000 pounds. And ISP is 311 seconds. So how long the first stage burns. What? No, I said 33 out of 36 were successful. I think we're talking about different things. You're talking about a cockpit. I'm talking about a rocket. Yes. So the second stage, it has a vacuum Rutherford. So we break that down. We have no, you're good, Dazer. I just want to make sure you heard correctly. Second stage, 25.8 or 5,800 pounds. Obviously, at second stage, you're going to have significantly less payload, significantly less rocket, not payload. That will remain constant. And even with the less, you have an ISP of 343 seconds. So that's going to get us the rest of the way there. The reusability, they actually parachute it down. It's pretty neat. It's 42 is what Digger told me. So they kind of they parachute it down, land it in the ocean, recover it. I think there's better ways to do it, but they haven't hired me yet. So this is going to be our launch. I'm actually going to skip ahead because we just stare at a rocket on the pad for a minute. Oh no, we're on the same page. So we'll get right into this. I'll let it play for a minute and then we'll have commentary. I think it starts immediately with commentary. I think they start commentary. If not, I will. Today, beautiful. There we go.
It is 40 minutes past midday here at Rocket Lab's Mission Control Center in Auckland, New Zealand, where launch operations are well underway in the lead up to our 36th Electron launch. Hello and welcome to our live broadcast for Rocket Like a Hurricane, a dedicated mission for NASA to launch the Tropics constellation.
They have
of
awesome
hurricane
names.
monitoring satellites. Today's mission is flying from Pad B.
One of their ones
at
was
Launch
Picture It
Complex
Didn't
1,
Happen.
our private spaceport on the Māhia Peninsula in New Zealand. T0 for Rocket Like a Hurricane is set for 1 p.m. local time. And for our friends at NASA watching in the United States, that translates to 9 in the evening Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, and a very early 1 a.m. UTC. My name is Muriel Baker.
And I'm Keegan Black, and we are thrilled to be with you for today's mission. Our launch and safety operations teams at the range in Māhia and here in Rocket Lab's Mission Control Center in Auckland are heading into the final T-minus 18 minutes of the countdown after methodically proceeding with final checks and preparations for Electron, NASA satellites, and the launch pad to make sure all
It was Sunday.
and ready for launch.
We have an exciting pair of satellites from NASA on Electron today. The two 3U CubeSats will begin a new constellation in low Earth orbit to monitor tropical cyclones, including hurricanes and typhoons around the world, hence the Tropics name, which stands for Time-Resolved Observations of Precipitation Structure and Storm Intensity with a Constellation of Smallsats. Another great NASA acronym. Today's mission is the first of 2 dedicated Electron launches to deploy the constellation.
This first launch has been dubbed by the NASA team as Rocket Like a Hurricane, and in about 2 weeks' time, we'll be following up with a second launch. That mission has been affectionately called Coming to a Storm Near You. Both missions are heading to a 550 kilometer.
This one is really small, Tweety.
An inclination of about 30 degrees. This is a unique orbit best reached with a dedicated launch, making
Really
Electron
small,
the ideal launch
but beautiful
vehicle
launch area.
to deploy Tropics. Here's more from NASA about Tropics and its importance, not just to NASA's Earth science.
There's a reason why the
but for
pane
all of
is
us
white,
eager to have more accurate, real-time information
for
on how
reflection,
things
for
come our way.
cryofuels and stuff like
Here's a
that.
question. How does a group of satellites, each no more than a foot long, help improve forecasts for tropical storms and hurricanes?
So this is what they're taking up.
Hurricanes are some of the most powerful and destructive weather events on Earth. The 2020 Atlantic hurricane season was brutal, producing a record-breaking 30 named storms. What's more, 10 of those storms were characterized as rapidly intensifying, some throttling up by 100 miles per hour in under 2 days. Many weather satellites will generally measure a storm only once every few hours, leaving gaps in coverage where a storm may quickly strengthen. To help fill this observation gap, NASA is launching Tropics, a collection of satellites designed to make a big impact on our understanding of damaging storms. Their mission? To provide near-hourly observations of a storm's precipitation, temperature, and humidity, allowing scientists to better understand what drives a storm's intensification. To achieve this, researchers at MIT's Lincoln Laboratory developed a miniaturized microwave radiometer that's about the size of a cup of coffee. This small instrument will measure storm strength by detecting the thermal radiation naturally emitted by the oxygen and water vapor in the air. As Earth's climate continues to change, cost-effective
A Reese's peanut butter cup.
satellites like Tropics will be an important tool to help us better observe developments driving rapid changes in powerful storms, and help forecasters better predict and prepare for the weather ahead.
Tropics has been a massive team effort to get
So,
the
of course,
satellites
there's
from
going to be
Māhia to
some
launch
climate
pad.
change
The
spin
science
to
team
this,
is
but,
led by the
you
Lincoln
know,
Laboratory
I think
of
it's good that we
Massachusetts
have
Institute of
constant,
Technology.
near
Others,
constant
including researchers from the NASA Goddard Space
looks
Flight
on
Center, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric
these heavy
Administration,
storms.
or NOAA, and several universities and commercial partners.
Few people have been closer to this mission than Stuart Cook. He is one of the mission managers for the Tropics program. And we were lucky enough to catch up with Stuart earlier in the week at our production.
I know I am
conference.
Princess,
Let's take a look.
and that's what I'm saying. They're going to spin it because it's a government agency in 23. But
My name is Stuart Cook.
it's still nice to have more information on these storms because there's very little we know about them. So
Think about 4 satellites orbiting the Earth. These satellites are looking down at clouds, at storms, at hurricanes, and they're looking to see how they form, how they intensify, or how they get stronger. So with Tropics, we have 4 CubeSats that are going to be orbiting the Earth. They're about the size of a loaf of bread, so very small compared to your traditional satellites. And the beauty of having 4 of these things orbiting the Earth is that they can revisit a storm every hour, which is very different from how traditional satellites do it. They may come by the same storm once every 10 hours. The data from Tropics, we're going to feed that to our partners, which are like NOAA.
oh,
National
absolutely.
Hurricane
And I
Center.
100%
They
agree,
take it,
Princess.
And it helps them improve their hurricane forecasting, hurricane modeling. So when you think about it from the end users and you look at a TV and you say, hey, a hurricane's coming up the coast of Florida, it says the storm could go this direction, it could go this direction. We have improved models that will have a tighter band of where that storm is going to be. It's giving better forecast information to not only NOAA, but to the viewers.
And it will get... I got kicked out of YouTube. Damn YouTube update. I didn't know.
2 hours. It says it can launch between
So they're going to spin so they can map a wider area since they're so small. So they can map that entire band. If they were stationary, they would only have a field of view that would be very small. So
that'll be a new experience. I'll be on console to give the roll call where all systems go for the payloads. We're just so excited to really see it happen now. I can't just contain my excitement because it's just a lot of anticipation leading up to this moment.
and it's a cool. I mean, this is a cool little rocket. That's why I wanted to cover it. But
We're
what's
very
up,
much
Jacob?
Looking forward to delivering those spacecraft to their new home in orbit, launching in just
So again, we're
13
watching
minutes
Rocket
time.
Like a
Right
Hurricane
now
from
on the
Rocket
countdown,
Labs
we are
out
at
of
13
New
minutes
Zealand.
and counting as our launch team gets into the final go, no-go poll for today's launch.
Our launch director today is Joseph Carpico. He will run through the list of
So we'll start
operators
getting
at
into
range
the
here in Mission Control
go no go
and check in
poll,
on
and
where the
Rocket
field
Labs
is
has been
sitting at
pretty.
go for liftoff.
Another thing with them
Let's
is
bring
they've
up
been
Mission Control
pretty
audio now,
upfront
and the poll is
with
underway.
the way that they handle things. So they're pretty transparent with their comms and stuff like that, which is cool. No, I agree, Princess. And it just gives you it gives you more data. So you process more data.
All operators, this is the LD on mission, proceeding with the go, no-go sequence. Stage.
Listen.
Stage is go.
Avionics.
Avionics is go.
GNC.
GNC is go.
Beacon.
Beacon's go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
Yes, AP.
PLS is go. RSO.
RSO is go.
MET.
MET is go.
MM.
MM is go.
LD sub.
LD sub is go.
The go, no-go sequence is complete. We are now T-minus 11 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. We are go for terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes. From this time, the 3-word hold procedure is in effect.
Jason, I will
Great news
look
there
for
from
you.
Mission Control. We are go for launch and ready to rocket like a hurricane for today's first Tropics launch for NASA. You also heard our launch director confirm today's liftoff target, which is set for 1 p.m. local time, or 9 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern and Pacific.
Looking back at the launch pad as we count down to liftoff, let's take you through the Electron rocket carrying the Tropics payload. Electron is a 2-stage to orbit liquid-fueled launch vehicle designed specifically for small satellite missions. At the bottom of the first stage is where we have 9 3D printed Rutherford engines located. A 10th space-optimized Rutherford engine takes us to orbit with our second stage.
The Rutherford engines use liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene as its propellant and oxidizer, and these are fed into the engine's combustion chamber in a world-first way, using electric pumps powered by batteries. Electron's structure is made of a carbon composite material, a super strong yet very lightweight material that gives our rocket its sleek black look. It's white now because of the cold liquid oxygen in Electron's tanks, which causes moisture to condensate as ice on the outside of the rocket. The Tropics satellites are mounted to the rocket's kick stage inside Electron's fairing or nose cone.
At around 3 minutes into flight, that fairing will separate into 2 halves, exposing the satellites to space ready for deployment. This mission, though, is a little different to a standard Electron launch after this point, because typically Electron's second stage would take us to an elliptical orbit around Earth, and then the kick stage would complete a final circularization burn with its tiny 3D printed Curie engine. But for Tropics, the second stage will be used to circularize the orbit, and the kick stage will instead perform an inclination change to place the 2 Tropics CubeSats into a precision orbital position.
Yes, please. This is not live. This was Sunday, but I covered a different topic on Sunday, so we're catching back up with it. So the FAA revoked SpaceX's license for Starbase Texas.
Avionics LD mission.
LD avionics.
Yes, sir. Please proceed with sequence 56, the avionics terminal check sequence.
So they're doing a full investigation for danger and safety and blah, 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 blah.
S-band is switched to high power.
What's up, Josh? So they'll investigate it and they'll come back and say, you have to make these changes. And then SpaceX will say, we're going to make those changes anyways. And then the FAA will say, well, blah blah blah, and they'll go back and forth,
Please proceed with.
and then they'll go to court,
After
and
today's
so
first
probably a
test,
year.
be launched soon after.
Absolutely, SpaceX is better than NASA.
In time for this year's
Um,
Atlantic hurricane season.
So probably
beginning
about a
in
year.
June.
I
So
would
even
I would
before we have
imagine
liftoff
that if
today,
it gets
we know
done
our
any
second
quicker
rocket
than a
will be
year,
rolling out to the pad for launch
uh,
in approximately
it would be
2 weeks
surprising.
from now.
The Tropics
So-
launches won't be our fastest launch turnaround to date. That record is just 7 days, which we achieved earlier this year with a mission from LC2 in Virginia that was swiftly followed up days later with a launch from LC1 in New Zealand. But 2 weeks between dedicated smallsat missions is something that just did not exist for smallsats prior to Electron. Part of the reason we can deliver these
I wish
missions
they'd
1
start
week
talking
later
about their
quickly
deck.
is down to our comprehensive parallel test
This guy is
programs
very New
to
Zealand.
prepare multiple electrons for the big day. Rocket Lab
Yeah,
mission
that's what I'm
management
saying.
team that go
Probably-
across the entire campaign for Tropics
It
is
is
not sure on what's involved
it
and
is
what to
Elon
do.
though, and he's already threatened to move it, one, out of the country if needed, and two, to where they do have a launch license at Cape Canaveral. So I think if we get into that 18-month time frame, Elon will just move it someplace else.
And the intensity of these storms is also increasing.
Because he's not going to wait for that.
Technology that we have on
He wants to be
orbit
back up in a
monitor
month.
Hurricane
So.
development may only be able to check in on these storms every couple of hours, but within that time, we might see a storm increase in intensity quite a bit.
Yep.
Tropics is
Absolutely,
a
Matthew.
constellation of 4
SpaceX
CubeSats
operates on a shoestring
that
budget
will
compared to
be able
NASA
to
and can still get more
monitor
innovation done to benefit a private
these
enterprise versus
intense
state-owned.
tropical
Yep.
storms in terms
And
of
NASA is so
precipitation,
caught up in
temperature, and
themselves.
humidity, and collect this data for us. And
They're
this data has
they're
the
stuck
potential
so
to
far in the
save
past
lives
that it's
and
kind of
livelihoods. So it very well aligns with
it's kind of
Rocket Lab's
ridiculous.
mission to improve life on Earth by
And
making
they don't want
access
the
to
ideas.
space.
They don't want the
Before
innovation.
launch
They
vehicle
want to
even
do
makes it to the launch site on launch day, it undergoes
they want to
much
do their old
rigorous
tech.
testing,
I
starting
forget what
with
they call
small
it.
component testing like our avionics, up into large stack testing.
What the hell's the
or
name
rapid
for it?
fire
They have a
testing
name for
of
it.
our
That's how
engines
much
at our test sites, and then
they
a
like their
full
old tech.
end-to-end wet dress
As we can
rehearsal
see
or
with the
practice
SLS that
for
cost
launch day.
nearly
And this is all part of making
$1 billion,
Electron
a
the most
little bit.
reliable
I think it was a little bit
small
more than that final
Once the
cost,
satellites
and
arrive at the launch
uses
site, the satellite
RL-25s
team
from
NASA and
the
MIT
1980s.
laboratories will be, inspecting
Engines
and
that
doing some
were
final checks on the satellites to
on
make sure that
the
they're ready
the
for
space
install
shuttle
on the launch vehicle. In
quite a
parallel
while
with those
back.
tests, Rocket Lab is also running additional tests on the launch vehicle, which is fully delivered to the launch site by this time.
Exactly, and that
We'll be
killed
doing
people.
Integrated testing
So.
end to end of our avionic systems and preparing
Boomer's
for
not the word.
satellites to be integrated
Legacy tech. There you
onto
go.
kick stage.
Thank you for
Then we will
for
encapsulate the spacecraft
jump-starting my mind.
and integrate
Legacy
the full launch
tech.
vehicle, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and roll out for wet dress rehearsal. A wet dress rehearsal is
What's up,
basically
Stevie?
a practice for launch day, where we perform all of the operations like we would on day of launch, including
Yep.
fueling the vehicle. And this gives us extra assurance that everything will go according to plan on launch day. Then we'll review the data from that test and proceed with launch. Everyone has a hand in helping Electron get to the pad for launch day.
It was
with
bullshit
our
20
design
years ago.
team, into our manufacturing team, as well as our test and LC1
It was
team,
bullshit
all the way
30 years
to,
ago.
Mission control and the engineers there behind me.
They have an
It's a team
interesting
of talented
dynamic because
engineers who
NASA's
have
losing out on a lot of
experience
younger
over
people
30 plus launches here at Rocket.
that want to innovate.
So as a mission manager,
Yeah,
it means that
absolutely.
I
It's
get to
like
work
staying
closely
with
our customer,
VHS
NASA
tapes.
and MIT
So that's the size
laboratories,
of the
and
that's the
I
size of the
am so
satellite right
excited
there,
for launch
by the
day
way.
and being able to tell them that we've successfully deployed their satellites
So
in
NASA
orbit and
wants
see the
to
real work begin there for them, and be able to
NASA's at
see
a
the
critical
excitement
point
not just
because
once,
they
but
have
twice,
the
because
old
we've
guard,
got two
the
back-to-back missions
the
to
Apollo
the pad. So I
program,
can't wait for launch day.
the
I'm
shuttle
very
program.
excited of it.
They have those kind of people that are still there and still very much in charge.
As we approach T
and
minus
then
4 minutes to lift
past
off,
that,
let's
you
take
have
through the last
a lot
minutes
of
before
individuals
those
that
non-robotic engines ignite.
are
At 2
just
minutes
coming out of
before
school,
liftoff,
and the
ground
ones that
power
aren't woke
supply
and
at the
dumb.
launch pad is disabled, and Electron switches to internal power. Our
Yeah,
launch safety
burying
system,
a
the
probe
AFTS,
30
will be
feet into a
enabled
planet's
at the same
surface because
time,
the
and
engineers
we can
didn't convert to
expect to hear
metric.
both of those
Yep.
calls from our operators in mission control, one after the other.
So
The
you
liquid
you have the
oxygen
old guard
supply
that's
valves in
retiring
stages 1
and moving
2
around.
are closed about 10 seconds later with another operator expected to confirm on comms.
Oh yeah,
that lock
even the
flow
government
is
screws
complete.
over the government
At
all the
under
time
a minute to launch
It's-
the propellant tanks will be at their optimum pressure
because
level
they have
for
to
launch.
protect their
Ground control
their
will
interest.
soon afterward confirm
So,
the water system at the launch pad is ready to be activated for when the engines
But yeah,
on the
sorry, I
rocket
got
ignite for
sidetracked.
launch. This is what will cause the large white cloud of water
I know
vapor
that's
at liftoff.
shocking.
At T
There's some
minus
fluff
10
if,
seconds, the launch
Isabel's
director
here.
will count down with the
There's some
mission clock
poofy
to
stuff at the
liftoff.
bottom there.
The engines will ignite at T minus 3 seconds, and the launch pad's hold down mechanisms will be released. Then,
So anyways, there's an interesting dynamic going on because you have the young people that are trying to innovate and NASA brass that's still in control that says, no, we should use tech that's proven. And like, this isn't
All operators LD on mission. We are
like,
go for auto sequence start at T minus 2 minutes. LD is go for launch.
so we're 2 minutes 38, and yeah. I've never been to Hawaii, but I hear their politics are terrible. Don't get my wife started. I hope she's not here. They've been wanting to go. I would prefer not to, but so at 2 minutes, so about 15 seconds from now, they'll start their pulling, the throttle ups, all that kind of stuff, and we'll watch it together and then jump in on the other side. So, hey, Daisy girl.
Vehicle is on internal power. AFTS is green and enabled for flight.
Lock set is complete. System is in recirc. Anti-geysering is disabled.
This is a relatively light payload, so this is going to jump. It should jump off the pad. But
Stage 1, stage 2, press for flight.
High flow engine purge enabled.
you can see those frost rings, the white frost, and the pressure vents coming off the side. Now the water's coming out on either side of the rocket. That's the deluge pumps.
T minus 20 seconds and counting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Dazer, we'll see it straight through. They're pretty good about uplinks.
HVB discharge is nominal.
Electron is soaring through the sky right now after lifting off from Pad B at Launch Complex 1, now on its way to low Earth orbit for NASA and Tropics. The first launch milestone the rocket will pass through is Max Q, when the forces against Electron are at their peak as the rocket moves quickly through the atmosphere. Mission Control is expected to call that out on the net shortly.
Clear Max Q.
NASA put their damn thing over our
Great news there
altitude.
with Max Q and onward and upward for Electron. It has only been about a minute since liftoff. and already the rocket is at its speeds of over 2,000 kilometers an
Should
hour.
be at about
The mere
18
fraction of
kilometers.
27,000 plus kilometers an hour, that is orbital velocity, which will reach ahead of payload deployment in the next 30 minutes or so.
Next, though, is the separation of the rocket between stages 1 and 2. For that to happen, we first need the 9 Rutherford engines currently burning hot to shut down, an action called main engine cutoff or MECO. Then a few moments later, stages 1 and 2 will spring apart. We'll hear that called out as stage separation. Then the single space-optimized Rutherford engine on the second stage will light up and carry on with the Tropics mission. Those milestones should be taking place at around T plus 2.5 minutes.
Really pretty plume. I like their 9 engine setup. 9 very small engines.
15 seconds to MECO.
They're in New Zealand, Eliza. This is Rocket Labs, so they're a New Zealand company. So we'll see this first stage drop off. You'll have some uplink issues. It's just normal. And there's the one vacuum optimized, and as we can see, just like the SpaceX one, there's the foil.
MECO stage separation, and we can now see that the Rutherford engine nozzle is glowing hot on the second stage. The Tropics satellites remain in good health on the Electron, and soon the rocket's onboard computer will command the fairing to separate and fall away. Now that we're in the vacuum of space, Tropics doesn't need the protection of the fairing anymore, so we get rid of that dead weight to maximize fuel efficiency on the way to orbit.
Can I go?
Separation successful.
Yeah.
Looking at the screen at the right moment just there, you will have seen those 2 nose cone halves falling away as planned with the fairing separation. Electron is performing nominally on its way to orbit with a few minutes between now and our next mission milestone, the battery hot swap for our second stage engine at around 6 minutes, 52 seconds into flight.
Yeah, I was just waiting for them to get done. Matthew, so explain max-Q. So max-Q is the maximum aerodynamic pressure. So it's the peak of when the atmospheric pressure is the most against the speed that the rocket's going. A lot of these companies have chose to throttle down at max Q so they can reduce those aerodynamic loads and not have to build as strong of a rocket. But it is that apex of where the aerodynamic pressures of the force of our atmosphere is intersects with the speed of the rocket. So and anything below max Q, the atmosphere is heavier, but the speed is dramatically less. And anything above max Q, the speed is higher, but the aerodynamic pressure from the atmosphere is significantly less. So you trade off one for the other than that brief moment of max Q. So max Q is maximum pressures on the rocket, structural pressures on the rocket.
Stage 2 propulsion hold nominal.
And again, the vacuum engines, this is a vacuum optimized engine for the vacuum of space. You're going to have a bigger nozzle because
nominal for Electron and Tropics. The rocket is moving steadily at more than 9,000 kilometers an hour, and we are inching closer to that 550 kilometer mark now that Electron has passed 300 kilometers altitude. To keep the mission running smoothly, we'll have another launch milestone coming up soon. It is called the battery hot swap, and it's essential to keeping our Rutherford engine running all the way to the mission's altitude destination. That action is due at around 6 minutes and 52 seconds in flight, so in just another 1 minute or so.
Okay, perfect. Let me talk, lady. So you'll see the first stage engines are very small. They're sea level optimized engines, so they're optimized for the atmospheric pressures and the things that are present in our breathing air. These ones, you have a little bit more leeway with things such as temperature. You don't have to have a cooling system on the engine because
When the
you're at
first
near
two
zero
battery
because you're in the
packs
vacuum of
supplying power to
space.
our
It's very
electropods
cold.
on stage 2 are close to
So you
being
don't have to
drained,
worry about as
the
much of
electron
that.
switches to a
And you can
fresh
also make a
battery that will
bigger
ensure
bell
Rutherford
because it's
and
not
Rutherford
under the
engine
stresses
lasts
and
the
the
distance
pressures
for
that's at
It's
sea
a believed our
level.
rocket has performed countless
So at
times
sea
before,
level, you'll
but it
see
is
smaller
contingent
engines
to
that are
electrons.
much more
Going hot off
robust,
the
have a
gas rail
cooling
in just a few
system, are
moments, we'll
much,
bring up the
you know,
mission control
thicker,
cards again
things
to
like
listen out
that.
for the call.
When you get to these, you don't have those same stresses on them, so you can make a bigger bell, and have less engines, less failure points. So,
Throttle inbound.
yep, very much so. AP. It's very similar. So,
Pulse was successful.
so there's those batteries coming off, those hot swap batteries.
Just
So
as it was planned, the Rutherford has switched to its new power source with the battery hot swap and is continuing nominally with the Tropics mission. There are a few minutes left in the engine's burn time before the second stage completes its final actions for the mission, shutting down Rutherford and then separating from the third stage.
So we got a minute to talk about that. So what does that mean? So Rocket Labs wanted a smaller, sleeker, more compact rocket. So on something like the Falcon 9, you have a closed cycle engine,
HVB discharge holding nominal.
and you actually pre-burn the fuel. So they pre-burn the fuel coming through.
How beautiful are some of these views from Electron?
So what you're saying is we need to just build a space elevator to the strata. I mean,
to our 400th engine milestone expected on
there are
our
better ways,
40th
sir. There are
Electron
better
launch.
ways.
In fact, one of the main pieces of our
Grim,
next will
good to
be
see you,
an
buddy, for
engine
one.
that
For
we
two,
have already
this is
launched
a
before.
Tropics
We are
mission
taking
for
the next
NASA
major
to
step,
study
evolving Electron into a
and
reusable rocket
have better
by
prediction
launching
models
a
for hurricanes
pre-primed
and
Rutherford
cyclones.
engine on one of
So
our
they
missions
are
later
two
this
small
year.
CubeSats
That
that are
engine,
going to
which flew
have
on our
kind of a
very first tracking mission
LiDAR-like
in May
technology,
2022, has undergone
um,
the same
and they will
extensive testing and
scan
acceptance processes
storms
as
at a
any
much
newly built
more
rocket,
effective way.
and has
So,
performed flawlessly throughout multiple full mission
oh, that's
duration
cool,
engine
JS.
tests. We are very excited to see that engine back on the
Is there's
page
the
soon.
same sonic
But
boom
back
and
to
the water
Tropics,
vapor,
as
though?
our
That's the
second
best part of
stage is
fighter jets.
performing well, and our
Um,
Tropics payload is healthy, as both
it is
continue traveling
actually
at speeds
it is
of
actually
over
NASA
19,000
itself.
kilometers
It's
per
not
hour.
NOAA. I don't think. Let me check. It's part of NASA's sports team. So short-term predictive research and transition.
All right, at T plus 8 minutes
Uh,
56
so it
seconds
is a
into this
NASA
for
mission.
NASA,
It's not
and we are
a
nearly in
it's not a
orbit.
mission for
In a few
another
moments, we'll be able to see that red hot
for
engine
another
light
individual
there
agency.
start to
So
turn cold once the engine on stage 2 shuts down.
Mission control will follow up these
uh
actions. Listen out for Seco
Dr.
contingent
Gary
alerts
Jedlovic.
coming up
Yeah,
shortly.
so it's gonna be a NASA program, not a third agency. So you can see the edges of the Earth. That's where the water falls off. Yep. Yeah, no worries. And if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them, or I can
Seco and stage
look for an
separation
answer for
confirmed.
you. So
That means our kick stage and Tropic satellites are now in their phasing orbit of Earth. It's been a perfectly nominal mission so far.
right.
But Electron's
Yeah, I
work
was getting to
isn't
that.
quite
So
done yet.
you'll see
That's right, Tropics
you'll see
is a
that
bit different to our usual
you can
launches.
see some
For this
cone
mission,
sonic
the
booms on
second
some of the
stage
bigger
sends in the
rockets that
kick stage
get up and
directly
go.
into a circular orbit, rather than the kick stage taking
Where the hell
the
did your comment
satellite
go?
on its usual
Uh,
elliptical journey around
But
Earth.
once you get
Then,
into
once the
less
kick stage
dense
passes the
atmosphere, you're not
equator
going
at
to get
what
it
is called
because
the
you don't
ascending
have the
node,
pressures
the
building
kick
up.
stage's Curie engine lights up to
So,
change its inclination
so
to head
not
up
like a
into
fighter
its
jet
desired
because
orbit.
you're at a
So
different
while we wait for
altitude and
that
blah blah
Curie
blah.
burn, we'll take a short break on the live stream
What's
now
the
and
international
continue to
designator?
hear those
So
final
this is
confirmations
Rocket
come through
Labs.
from
It's
mission
a
control.
company
We'll be
that
back
is
soon.
in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. So they launched from New Zealand. They're the preeminent small sat or CubeSat provider currently now. We were talking about that earlier. It's kind of bullshit that the Kiwis are taking up sensitive technology for the United States government. But unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves at right now. So it's a Kiwi mission. The mission is NASA Tropics, and it is shit. I forgot what they called it. It's in the bottom. I forget, but they always have a play on words. So, well, they can't put it outside of the rocket because then it would just fall off. So this is interesting. So obviously Earth's not flat as much as Dazzler tries to put it. Sorry, I lost my shoe. Hang on. Thought about buying a weather station, but I don't know if I want the government watching my backyard. Yeah? That's exactly. That's yep. And they won't support some of the smaller companies that are on the U.S. shores that would love to have those contracts. But NASA is asshole. So you'll see an orbital track. You'll see these big, like, up and downs, peaks and valleys, because we're obviously not going. This is a 2D plane of a 3D object, so of a globe model. So you'll see that reflected, and you'll see it almost looks like a sine wave or an audio wave with the orbital track as we get going here. So I'm just going to act like none of you are saying any of that. It's flat. People haven't been high enough yet. At least that's what flat earthers say. You know, if I got high enough, you could convince me that the Earth was flat. I'm sure of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I can. I'm not going to, but I can. Oh shit, everyday astronaut sound. I might get struck for it. So I want to get to most of it, but we coast for a long time. Like I told you, it's all about getting there, and then once we get there, we do these short burns that corrects our trajectories. So there's a lot of time in between burns. So we'll try and get
These small but extremely powerful satellites.
Shit, I went too far.
It is relightable and it gimbals to.
Let's see how close we are there. So we're coming up on this burn. This burn will normalize the orbit, and then they'll deploy the payload shortly thereafter. But no comment. No comment at all, sir. Listen, I will have the conversation with somebody if they're genuine about it. Exactly. I mean, Sunday night, you should have looked up. You might have still been able to see it. Although this is a smaller one, so probably not. In London, you can never see the sun or the moon, so because of the clouds.
Word there from Mission Control that the Curie engine is expected to have now ignited. This engine is relightable and it gimbals to orient the kick stage in a very precise manner.
Oh, bastards aren't going to show us this part.
Accuracy for payload deployment. Listening in now for the next call of Curie shutdown ahead of payload deployment.
So this is a kick stage they're talking about. So it's a deployable nozzle, essentially. There are different ways to do this. They're happy with their kick stage. Again, or the sky full stop. Yeah. It's Leo. Low Earth orbit. I don't know what the final altitude is on it, and NASA has their big logo in the corner. So, and again, Grim, this actually happened on Sunday. I just had a different topic that was already in the books for Sunday, so I didn't have an opportunity to actually cover it live, but I wanted to get to it. Rocket like a hurricane. That's the name of this mission. Sorry, I couldn't remember.
As Muriel mentioned earlier, we're currently waiting for the Curie engine shutdown, followed by the call for payload deployment for the first pair of Tropics satellites for NASA. The two 3U CubeSats are each not much bigger than a loaf of bread, and these small but extremely powerful satellites will begin a new constellation in low Earth orbit to monitor tropical cyclones around the world.
Tropics aims to measure temperature, humidity, and precipitation so that we can better understand the evolution and structure of storms, and doing so with a high revisit rate within the hour will be invaluable.
So no piping is always flat before it's made to be round. So in essence, it's logically had to be flat at some point. It was just a little squished. Actually, the Earth is very, very pole heavy, or equator heavy. So it's actually normalized to bulge. It's actually bulged out at the equator. So there's a little bit of a bulge to it, and it's a little bit spun out, and that's because of the rotation. So, it's not NASA. It's Rocket Labs.
Shutdown is expected.
Rocket Labs
around,
names their
a
missions.
few minutes from
Cool
now,
shit.
Actually, so not long to go, and then a few seconds later, we should
one
hear
of the ones that
expected nominal payload deployment from Mission Control. Let's check back in.
one of the ones that actually exploded that I watched.
There goes Curie engine shutdown. Listening in now for payload deployment.
One of the ones that blew up in their early testing was Pixar. It didn't happen. It was a NASA mission through Maxar, and it was an imaging satellite for NRO. And this is obviously an animation. So there's your kick stage with those two little loaves of bread. That big ass rocket for those two little loaves. Mother Earth has a bulge, yes. No, don't give NASA any credit. I don't know where they're over.
Expected nominal payload deployment.
Expected, but just call it out then. Is that Florida? Yeah, that's Florida.
And there is the call out from Mission Control. Expected nominal payload deployment.
Yeah.
Congratulations, NASA and the Tropics team, and welcome to your new home in orbit. When the kick stage passes over the next ground station at Azores, we expect to receive the full telemetry package that confirms everything you've just heard from Mission Control. Look to our social media channels for that update within the hour as we close out this broadcast for our 36th Electron launch.
Was it Baja, California?
To do it all over again with NASA for our second launch for the Tropics mission to place another pair of small sats on orbit.
Okay, tell me about your deck, though.
Coming to a storm near you, both literally and figuratively, as our next launch's mission name, is set to fly from Launch Complex 1 in just a couple of weeks' time to help ensure NASA's Constellation is up and running in time, ready for this year's hurricane season, set to begin on June 1st.
We're going to end the broadcast now, but you can always keep in touch with us and stay in our orbit by following us on social media to see, hear, and learn about what we do here at Rocket Lab. And to follow along NASA's Tropics mission, you can head to blogs.nasa.gov/small satellites.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Rocket Lab Mission Control, signing off.
So that was it. That was the Electron rocket. So we'll talk about it for a minute, and then I have some other. Yeah, they're talking about the. Sorry, I'm looking at other stuff, and they're talking about the NASA shutting down the Starship program. So what that really is it's yet another company that is outpaced NASA. They're very They have a very small range of things that they're able to do. Yeah, it's negligible. It's negligible. But it is. So now that that's over, so there's a funny story. So we were down in, I was invited to Wapakoneta, Ohio for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo program. And Wapakoneta, Ohio is where Neil Armstrong's from. And shit. Sorry, I'm clicking buttons. That's where Neil Armstrong's from. It's not terribly far. So we met astronaut Scott Kelly. And when I say electron rocket, what do you mean? That's what we saw. Yeah. Sorry, that completely threw me off because I was trying to remember what you were talking about. So what was I? We met an astronaut, and I told my very young child to ask him if the Earth was flat, and he did, and the astronaut didn't take offense to it or anything, but said, "It's not. I've been up there," and that was, pretty much all. But I thought it was kind of cool that I baited my son into asking an actual astronaut if the Earth was flat. And I think it's important that we actually take the time to check that kind of stuff out. I mean, not take it at face value, do your research, look into it, but stay open. It's not a different type of combustion. It's shit. I started talking about this and then got sidetracked. So, surprise, surprise. What it is like, for example, the Falcon 9 is a rocket and a power station. So they pre-burn the fuel, and it turns the turbines for the turbopumps as well as to generate electricity. The generation of electricity then keeps the rocket, covered in electricity. So one of the key differences in complexity with the Electron rocket and why they named it that is they actually charge up batteries and hot swap batteries. So they swap batteries. They have two sets of batteries that they take up. They swap them partway into flight, and that provides the power for the critical systems for the flight. Whereas a traditional rocket or even SpaceX's rockets, there's a power generation station in the turbopumps that feeds the power to the system. So, but they actually use a very old fuel. They use RP1, which is rocket grade kerosene and oxygen. So, maybe. I'm not talking. Well, stop with the squirrel. Yes, absolutely. So it's there. So there's an ion thruster program at University of Michigan that I'm still trying to get somebody to let me go play with, but I haven't put that much effort into it. I'm just hoping somebody calls me, and that hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to have to start actively doing it. But yeah, they have a pretty good program at Michigan, and I think that will be, but that's propulsion once we get into vacuum of space. It's not going to be propulsion on surface because the atmosphere is very, very thick, and we have to be able to get up there. So that's the difference. That's why they call it the Electron. Just just a play on the names, and they were using, battery power instead of the traditional systems of building it or of supplying it with power. So. Okay, gotcha. Only played Kerbal Space Program for like 2 hours. I appreciate it, Matt. Hopefully you learn a little bit of something. I had one. I was going to watch one that didn't go so well. That one's... No, this is okay, so we'll do one that wasn't so successful. Theirs is not flat. Well, U of M has some great programs, and they have some great professors there. But yeah, the woke bullshit is really strong there. Really strong there. So yes, please hit the like and subscribe. Grim, are you on Discord? I thought you were. Yeah, I see you. I'm sending you a message real quick. So. So this is one that didn't go very well, and I so did they took a Doge to the moon. So no, I don't. Yeah, but yours will be on easy mode, Dazzer. You just have to point to the color blue. Can you do that? I think Elon will buy Rocket Lab sometime, merge with SpaceX. No, because they service different markets and they serve different satellites. Elon is very interested in two things. He's very interested in Mars, and he's very interested in large-scale payloads, like, for example, his Starlink. Rocket Labs is servicing small like that. There's about 9,000 satellites on the ground waiting to go up. There's a severe shortage in launch providers, and even Elon Musk has come out and basically begged for infrastructure and investment into new providers. So it's okay. We'll work on it. So he'll never buy them. They serve different parts of the market, and truly there's not enough money in it for Elon to worry about it and take that additional risk. If he wanted to, one, to get on a SpaceX rocket, you have to wait a very long time. Two, it's a rideshare mission, so NASA couldn't send a dedicated mission like they did with the Electron. They would have to rideshare and wait an extended time with SpaceX. So there could be 60, 70, 80, 100 more satellites on the Falcon 9 with NASA's. And NASA doesn't like to play nice. So yeah, there's quite a bit of them. Here, let me show you. Around Earth, because it's a cool picture if you've never seen it. And that one's probably a little outdated. So all these little teeny dots, you can barely even tell because they're almost, these aren't stars, they're all satellites and junk around Earth. So quite a bit. So you can see all around. And that's part of the, there's a, totally looks like my old KSP games. Do you have the interactive globe with all the satellites you can get off Starlink website? I don't have it. I don't have it easily accessible, but I know that they do. There's a, maybe I'll do a spot and reach out to the gentleman that, yeah. so there's a theory that, and this is why we're going to watch this other launch, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Chinese rocket program. China gets zero fucks and kind of does what they want. We are that there's so much orbiting, and these are orbiting at 18,000 kilometers, an hour. So very fast, and so one minor interruption could start a chain reaction that could make it so we couldn't launch another satellite off from Earth. So yeah, no wonder China, well, that's a different security risk. But I know an individual that's here in Michigan that has it looks like an octopus, and it just kind of sucks the satellites in and just continues to suck them in and kind of recycle the materials, or can deorbit the materials, all that kind of stuff. And its mission is to kind of bring it in and bring stuff back to Earth. He's a great guy. Maybe I can get a hold of him and we can do a Tuesday night spot with him and he can explain it better. But that's something that we need for sure, and it needs to be done because we put a lot of junk up there, and there's a lot up there right now, a lot more than this. This is, like I said, an older picture, but just somewhat of an illustration. So I don't remember the narration on this, but we'll try. We'll see how it is. Yeah, pretty much. China, so with that, China hooks them and injects them with malicious code. So that's what the satellite hook from China does. But we'll watch this short mini doc. Shit, I forgot to switch tabs. Sorry, boomer.
This rocket is carrying a telecommunications satellite intended for use for the next 15 years. However, it will never make it to orbit. In fact, it won't make it much further than a few hundred feet above the ground. As soon as this rocket takes off, it veers off course and travels horizontally, crashing just 20 seconds later into an inhabited area. That wasn't the end of the story, though. Strangely, an investigation would cause international controversy, not due to any shocking revelations. The investigation itself broke defense and military regulations, despite the fact the launch was a commercial venture. Unfortunately, that isn't the only example of shady dealings that surrounds this disaster. After the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, NASA announced they would no longer carry commercial satellite payloads aboard space shuttles, forcing satellite operators to use commercial expendable launch vehicles. Many companies then looked abroad, where this service could be found for cheaper. One such nation was China. For
Upset muted
years,
myself.
China had been using its Long March series of expendable launch system rockets, and in 1996 were ready to launch the first Long March 3B. On board was Intelsat 708, a telecommunications satellite built by American company Space Systems Loral for multinational satellite services provider Intelsat. Satellite technology was protected by ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations.
It
These
was.
are a set of regulations in place in the United States to control the export of defense technologies to prevent them from falling into the hands of
ITAR's a bitch. U.S. government. You need to reform it because it's ridiculous.
adversaries. Launch vehicles, guidance systems, and satellite components were all
Everything.
controlled by ITAR, and as such, Space Systems Loral had to receive licenses from the US Department of State to launch Intelsat satellites on Chinese rockets. Intelsat 708 would be launched aboard a Long March 3B rocket from Xichang Satellite Launch Center in China. Near the gates to the center, about 3 miles from the launch pad, sits a residential complex intended to house employees, as well as a hotel to
Great
accommodate
safety.
foreign workers, such as the Space Systems Loral employees who will be involved with the Intelsat 708 launch. The aerospace workers share this space with local villagers. On the morning of the 15th of February 1996, Intelsat 708 was due to be launched. All personnel were
Such
ordered
an
to go
ugly
to the
rocket,
satellite
though.
preparation building inside the launch center, thus clearing the employee accommodations. As they passed through the main gate, they noticed a lot of locals had gathered there, presumably to watch the launch. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of them. At 3 a.m., Intelsat 708 took off and immediately swerved off course, sending the 400-ton rocket down the valley and towards the main gate from which the workers had just come. In about 20 seconds, it
That
crashed
big phallic
into a
object just
hillside.
went towards the
With
valley.
most of its propellant still on board, the vehicle erupts in a massive explosion. Witnesses recall that the 3 a.m. hillside momentarily resembled day as the explosion lit up the valley. The order for workers to leave the residential area had likely saved their lives, as it was now all destroyed, some buildings entirely flattened by the rocket that had crashed.
And that's one of the we complain about the FAA, well, at least I do, because of the way that they handle things. However, there's some things that I think they do well, and exclusion zones is one of those things. I think it's important to not have things like this that close to where a relatively routine accident for space travel could potentially, do this much damage and devastation. Like, there are large exclusion zones, and they take them very, very seriously and protect them very well. So, yeah, I think that's one of the things that we get right, frankly.
Crashed just 200
These are
feet
dangerous
away.
machines.
Officially, the Chinese state media claimed the incident killed 6 people and injured 57. Supposedly, the crowds of villagers gathered at the gates for the launch had been evacuated in the time between the workers entering the center and the launch, although many workers were skeptical about this. Witnesses at the scene reported the area was quickly flooded with Chinese soldiers, military vehicles, and dozens of ambulances.
Of course, they're going to clean
Also
it all up
spotted were
and
flatbed trucks hauling
try
off
and hide
large
it.
concealed masses, which some suspect were human remains. American estimates suggest the death toll may have been somewhere between 200 and 500 people, which would make it the deadliest space launch accident in history. The Chinese investigation determined that the Long March 3B rocket had suffered a failure within the guidance system of the rocket. However, the relevant space launch insurance companies insisted on an independent review of this investigation. As such, engineers from Space Systems Loral and other Western aerospace companies were brought in to take part in the review committee. This committee found that while the original investigation may have been correct, it pointed out that there were two other potential points of failure and suggested tests be performed to prove or disprove each component as the issue. Following this review, the Chinese identified the problem was one of the committee's suggestions rather than their original conclusion. This was the third
Of
launch
course.
failure in 38 months involving a Long March rocket, and this finding helped the Chinese improve the reliability of the Long March series. They did not experience another failure until 2011. This may sound like a very favorable outcome, but it actually put Space Systems Loral in a lot of trouble. In 1997, the US Defense Technology Security Administration found that the review committee had significantly benefited China in their development of guidance systems that could be used in satellite launch vehicles or, for example, ballistic missiles.
Missiles.
As previously mentioned, there are regulations controlling the export of these technologies, and because the Space Systems Loral engineers freely shared their findings with Chinese engineers instead of submitting them for prior governmental review, they had basically performed a defense service in violation of export control regulations. Space Systems Loral paid $20 million in fines and compliance expenses. There is another small twist to the tale. The disputed figure of 6 fatalities and whether or not there was a cover-up of death on a much larger scale is debatable. However, Western engineers noticed a disturbing detail on return visits to Jichang Satellite Launch Center. The workers' accommodations have been repaired, renovated, reconstructed.
I already made
The
one.
neighboring village is gone.
Go back and listen.
There is no memorial in its place, and no mention in the media of what happened to it. It simply disappeared. Like the villagers, the workers
No
had
worries,
seen
man.
gathered at the gates. By the time they came back, they were gone. Vanished. Erased, perhaps.
So yeah, I agree 100%. ITAR is way too restrictive, but I think we can all agree.
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
I think we can all agree on that. And I already made the phallic object in the valley, but I think you missed it, AP. But yeah, I wanted to show you one that didn't go so well, and the power that they have, and what can go wrong with them. Also, any attempt that you can get to, oh, you should have. Any attempt that you can get to shit on China, like free range, that's always a good thing too. So, I was gonna take that one every day of the week. But yeah, as you know, I like rockets and I enjoy covering them. I enjoy talking to you guys and explaining some of the stuff that I know about. So, I hope you caught the puffy stuff because I was looking for you, but I didn't see. Got excited. So yeah, another successful launch. That's a very interesting program that Rocket Labs has going on. We'll see how many US-based launches they're doing. If it was just a requirement for our government, or if they actually intend on doing launches there. So. But yeah, that was the launch, ladies and gentlemen, and probably gonna wrap it up here. This is talk a little bit about the new schedule. So Mondays are Madness Mondays. Right now we're doing the Mark Litinsky cannibal gay grinder hookup ritual murder thingy trial thing, I guess. Hey, no worries. I like sharing it. I'm passionate about it, and if I know it, then I'd love to share it. So Mondays are that. Tuesdays are gonna be science and tech because I like doing it. Wednesdays are gonna be my off days ish. Thursdays we're going to do brief, shorter topics, briefer topics, and then we're gonna head over to my Discord to the. I think they changed it to Media Drive-In. And we watched a movie together. This week is going to be Deadpool 2. We watched Deadpool 1 last Thursday. Fridays are build and chat, hang out with you guys, maybe have a couple drinks. Saturdays are Sea Saturdays, so we play Sea of Thieves. We're doing the Pirates of the Caribbean missions. And Spicy Sundays, we are on the Clinton body count. So that's what we got coming up. You're welcome to join us anytime, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So I could potentially talk about brief on the brief topic Thursday. But thank you guys all for joining me, and you all have a wonderful night. We'll see you soon. Take care.